Hey, welcome to Pat's Soundbites IGTV. Keeping new music alive is what I do on the radio and now on video. Conducting live chats with the artists and learning the stories behind their latest release and also playing their new video. And a special thanks to my friend Ann Layton, owner of Layton Media, Music Services and Motivation. Ann believes that artists can work within their own means by creating their own career opportunities. And she has done that for herself via her love of mass media as a writer, publicist, and a music services person. And she has done an amazing job. To contact Ann, you can call her at 718-881-8183 or by email at ann@annlayton.com. Special thanks today to my sponsor, Go-Go Tuners. For all guitar players looking for a focus on ease of use, readability, durability, and accuracy, look no further. The Go-Go Tuner is the choice of many touring professionals and a favorite of casual players. Go-Go's signature green you're in and red you're out screen makes tuning quick and easy. For more information, go to the website at gogotuners.com. Special thanks to WBXO Classic Rock Radio Redefined, allowing me to keep new music alive on the radio airways on the Pat Show every Sunday from 5 to 8 Eastern Standard Time. Only on WBXO Classic Rock Redefined. And a big thank you to Mr. Evan Balzer for allowing me to use his amazing instrumental that you're hearing right now. It's called Trails. To find out more incredible music by Evan, go to his website at evanbalzer.com. And my special guest today is leader and co-founder of the band FireFall, Mr. Jock Bartley. You remember FireFall with all those hits, one after the other. Just Remember I Love You, Strange Way, Mexico, Cinderella, You Are the Woman. Well, FireFall has released their first album in more than 2 decades. It's called Comet, and they released their first single. It's called Way Back When. What a cool video. We're going to talk to Jock about all of that. We're going to play the video and a whole lot more right here on Pat Soundbites IGTV. Hey, live on Pat Soundbites IGTV. Keeping new music alive on the radio and video. And man, do we got a great show lined up today. Well, he's back. And the band is back, and they're better than ever. And wow. I'm talking, going way back when I had jet black hair, back to 1976, this band took the world and banged it out of the park, went for a good ride, like a Comet ride, back with chart-topping singles that I just grew up and you still hear them today. You Are the Woman, Just Remember I Love You, Strange Way. Proud, honored to have this guy alongside of me on this video. Founding member, still going strong, musician, Mr. Jock Bartley. Jock, what is going on? A FireFall! Holy
FireFall!
FireFall is going back up as a comet. How's it going, Jock?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's great. The first new album in more than 2 decades. The album is called Comet. It came out on December 11th on Sunset Boulevard Records. I got to say, Jock, I've listened to it probably 3 times, and my wife loves it, and it's one of them. Well, it says CD. Before I get into it, is there going to be vinyl? Because I keep referring to album.
I hope so.
Okay,
cool. From what I've been hearing from our record label, that a lot of the vinyl pressing plants around the country are backed up by like 9 months or something.
That is true, but I would still push for it anyway. So it's like, red or pick out a great color. But Anyway, I love every track, and I'm glad that you guys are back. How are you doing dealing with this COVID headache?
It's a pain, and for some of the guys in my band to not have a salary from gigs we play for a year or more is tough. So we're scrambling, but I'm really happy that we put the record out now. And our label wanted us to maybe, I had this album turned in last December, and we were going to put it out in January or February of 2020. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and everybody, came to a crashing halt. And Mark Andes and I, the bassist in FireFall, and I really persuaded them to put it out now because there's not a lot of new music being put out now. And pretty much I would guess that most artists and most bands that have a new record, they're holding back to put out in the summer or the fall of 2021, and we wanted this out here because we're really proud of the record. It took us a long time to make for the simple reason that all the guys in the band live in 5 different states. So to get us into the studio together to sing background vocals or, cut songs or something was kind of a pain in the ass, but we're really happy with it, and we're really glad it's out now and getting some really good attention.
The tracks are just killer. This is a CD, maybe album down the road, or vinyl that you can just put in your car, truck, and just go from track to track. The things that caught my attention, Jock, was I like the order of the tracks. It kind of really flows. I mean, Way Back When opens it up and brings you like, holy crap. I mean, the verses of Going
Right.
Way Back When, talking about that whole classic musical era in the mid 60s, and it just goes. And a New Mexico, boy, if that's not the right song to end the CD, what a difference a year makes. No shit.
Ain't that the truth?
It's perfect. Isn't that the truth, right? So
yeah. Well, it's interesting because as producer of the record, and this whole thing started about 3.5 years ago when FireFall was playing the Old Spirit song on stage, Nature's Way. And we got such good response from it with Mark Andes, who didn't sing lead back then. It was Randy California and all the Spirit guys back in 1970. It got such really great response from the crowds that we were playing for that I persuaded Mark to record it, with us. And we recorded the song, and that opened the door for a possible new album. Now, FireFall, as you can imagine, just like a lot of the bands that we tour with when we tour a lot, like America and Ambrosia and Poco and Pure Prairie League and Orleans and Atlanta Rhythm Section and all those great bands from the 70s that had hits like we did, for the last 20, 30 years, we've been coasting. And we go out and play on the road, and particularly on a package show where there's 3 or 4 or 5 bands, you're given 35 or 40 minutes to play. And I know what 35 or 40 minutes we need to play on our set, because people expect those songs that you just mentioned, and right. Mexico and Cinderella and Livin' Ain't Livin' and all those songs from the 70s that, made FireFall famous. And I knew going into this record that we needed to have at least half of the record, if not more, really sound like FireFall, like people remembered from the best of the 70s records. And, and once Nature's Way got pretty much recorded and sounding great, I wrote Way Back When. And when I wrote the first verse, I really wanted the song to be about how great the music of the mid and late 1960s was. And that all those great artists and music from that time really led to the bands of the 70s writing their own songs, being daring and taking, whatever came out. And by that time, record labels were pretty much accepting a lot of stuff that was being played and didn't have that big control that started happening from about the 80s on. So I knew that we needed to sound like FireFall, and, which was easy to do because we have 3 original guys in the band. Mark Andes on bass, David Muse on sax and flute and keyboards, and me on lead guitar. We know how to make good records, FireFall records. And it was just a matter of finding the right songs and taking the care to get them sounding right. And you mentioned a New Mexico. That's a funny one because, as producer and, a guy looking for songs, whether they were within the band writing or outside, I knew that I really wanted to have a song like Rick Roberts's Mexico on the record. I wanted a song like Mexico. I wanted a New Mexico. I wanted a New Mexico. And then the light bulb went on and went, so write a New Mexico.
Right, exactly.
With our hat, taken off to Rick Roberts's great song, Mexico, which, a lot of people think probably was my highlight as a lead guitar player in FireFall's history, because that was really, that I was born to play on that song and songs like that. I'll tell you, there's one of my favorite stories about FireFall for me personally. When, so I was a young guitar student from a very famous jazz guitar player named Johnny Smith, who dropped out of the New York jazz scene and came to Colorado and started teaching people and having a music store. And he was grooming me to be the next little jazz prodigy, or, I was playing Bach and Duke Ellington and all this great stuff. And then, of course, February 9th, 1964, the Beatles played on Ed Sullivan's show. And it was like, I knew, and I kind of stopped wanting to be a jazz guy, and I wanted to be in a rock band. And, and a few years later, I heard Eric Clapton play for the first time, and literally on Fresh Cream. And then I discovered the John Mayall and the Blues Breakers album that Clapton was on. And literally the heavens opened up. Suddenly that was possible for lead guitar players, and man, I wanted to do that. So fast forward, FireFall in the winter of 1975 is in Miami, Criteria Studios in Miami. And the Bee Gees are down the hall recording, and Stephen Stills is in and out, and nobody knew who FireFall was, even though we had Michael Clarke from the Byrds and Mark from Spirit and me from Graham Parsons and Rick Roberts from the Flying Breeder Brothers, who had replaced Graham Parsons. When it came time, and the key to FireFall has always been how great the songs were. The songs first, and then the singer to sing them. And when it came time for me to do the solo on Mexico, I knew that was going to be maybe my moment to shine as a lead guitar player. It so happened that the day before I started the solos on that song, we recorded that mariachi horn section in the middle of my solo, which sounded great, but I'd never played with that before or had to contend with the horn section. So I'm warming up out in the studio, and people are in and out of the control room in Miami, and the producer pushes the button, says, "You ready to go?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm warmed up. My amp sounds good. Let's go." So he hits the button, and I start playing as an overdub to Mexico. I think I was one of the last things that was added to the song on lead guitar. Started going great. First verse, cooking. Second verse, oh yeah, cooking. Now it's time for my solo. So I start my solo, and I'm thinking, I have no idea where the horn section is. So I just kind of played until the horn section were there, and I stopped, and then I played, and then they played, and I played, and I ended up finishing the whole track off, kind of a one-take thing. And the producer, Jim Mason, said, "That was great. Come on in." And I went, "Well, I had no idea where the horns were going to play. So keep what I just did and give me the solo section again, and let me see if I can beat it, okay? And he went, no. And I went, no, Jim, come on. I've been working on this song for a year and a half. Let me see if I can. Let me take 30 more seconds and see if I can just beat playing with the horn section. And Jim said, no, come on in. And I went, no. So I take my guitar off. I put it down and I kind of storm in the control room to give him a piece of my mind. And the first person I see is my guitar hero, Eric Clapton, who's been watching me play.
Whoa.
And, and I just went, I turned into Jackie Gleason, hamina. And he stood up and said, keen playing, man, and left. It was the only time I ever met Eric Clapton.
No, come back.
But it was funny. And then the producer said, so what do you want to do again? And I couldn't play another note that day at all. And the truth is it's a good thing I didn't know he was in the control room, because I wouldn't have been able to play at all.
Oh yeah, that would have definitely.
And as it turned out, I played one of my most memorable and rockin' solos on Mexico, and Eric Clapton was watching me play. So.
Holy wow! I mean, what are the chances of that? Damn,
not very much. And and it was funny. So I knew that when we started working on this new record, and we had 4 or 5 songs done and getting ready to go, and we needed a few more, I kept thinking, I need to write a New Mexico. And then I wrote this song that was reminiscent of Rick Roberts's Mexico, and got to play a lot of those same kind of guitar licks. And I'm really glad
you made it fresh. You made it relevant like today.
Right. I'm glad it ends the record because it kind of takes people back. But I'm really happy that you like all the records, and that you like the order of the songs and how they flow together.
I always feel that's important. I mean, I'm trying to, is it a concept? What's the story? But if it don't flow, it loses something.
Right.
Starting back with Way Back When, and then a Real Fine Day is a killer song. I mean, the harmonies, you said you wanted to make it Firefall. Well, every track here is definitely a Firefall track. I mean, you can close your eyes and hear the guitars, hear the harmonies, hear the backup vocals. It's smooth. It's radio friendly. I mean, A Real Fine Day, if that doesn't get you, put you in a better mood, great uplifting song. And, then you get into...
Which is perfect for the pandemic day. It's like, let's go out and have a real fine day.
Exactly. You touched upon Nature's Way. I haven't heard that song in years.
Right.
Until I played your tracks here, and I go, oh, yeah, Spirit. And then when I read Timothy B. Schmit and John McFee, I'm like, boy, I met Timothy. He had an album, a solo album out a few years back, Leap of Faith, and I got to meet him and interviewed him a few times. Boy, is he fit perfect on that song. I'm surprised. I wrote here my notes. I'm really surprised. Maybe I'm asleep at the wheel, but not many artists or bands have really covered that track. That's a beautiful track.
Oh man, I mean, it was back. I always thought it was late '60s, but it actually came out in early 1970.
Okay.
And it was like an environmental anthem and the end of the hippie days kind of.
Exactly.
Perfect song. I'm surprised that it didn't get, re-recorded by other bands too. I think there's a few other versions, but now Mark is kind of like one of the last guys standing, and and he kind of controls if somebody calls and says, "Can I do Nature's Way?" or whatever, even though he didn't write the song, And so I put that in Mark's ballpark and just said, let's do it and everything. And what's interesting is when FireFall had the honor of being inducted into the Colorado Music Hall of Fame in early 2015, it was the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Poco, that had Timothy B. Schmit playing with Poco, FireFall, and Stephen Stills and Manassas. What a induction class that night. But we're hanging backstage, and Poco's dressing rooms right across the hall from ours. And Mark and Timothy B. Schmit, who knew each other but weren't really good friends at that time, you know, we're all out in the hallway, you know, laughing and yucking it up. And Timothy B. Schmit said, you know, Mark, when I was a high school senior in Sacramento, California, Spirit was my absolute favorite band, and you were my hero on bass.
Wow.
And I used to drive anywhere in California, you know, no matter where it was, Northern California, Southern California, to buy a ticket and hear you guys. And Mark, of course, being the humble guy he is, he's kind of like laughing and turning red and everything. But when we cut Nature's Way, Mark said, you know, I think I'm going to call Timothy B. Schmit and see if he wants to help me sing this song, you know, maybe even sing the second verse, which is what we did.
Right.
And Timothy jumped at the chance because here it was, Spirit was one of his favorite bands.
Mark.
Yeah. And of course, John McFee from the Doobie Brothers was in Timothy's touring band behind Timothy's album. And John said, God, I hear some steel guitar on that. So it was so great getting two big rock stars like that to want to play on our version of Nature's Way.
I mean, perfect fit. I mean, Timothy could just do the whole song himself, but I go,
oh yeah,
wow, that was really cool. You know, the other song that really got my attention was Ghost Town. You never hear anybody play a flute anymore. I mean,
that's
the
right.
Moody Blues, Marshall Tucker, it's like a lost instrument. And the more I listen to Ghost Town, it just resonated with me, boy. What a great instrument. And it's not on a lot of songs that really somebody should really add it to it.
Well, what's interesting was the songs were of prime importance back in the day. The singers, the vocals, all the great musicianship that Mark and myself and David and Michael Clark brought to FireFall, the synergy of what we sounded like as a band. But one of the things that people remember was the interplay between my lead guitar and David's sax and flute. And I really wanted to capture that on a couple of songs on this record. And Ghost Town was perfect. And I'm really glad that David's flute's all over that song, because in fact, that was the song that I'm going, sounds like Mexico. You know, I kept thinking, God, this is like a guitar song, but David really wanted to do the flute. And I said, okay, I'll write another song. But yeah, Ghost Town really adds a great thing to our Comet record and takes people back to when FireFall was happening in the 70s.
What's the story behind the title Comet? So I read somewhere, I thought it was a follow-up of a lot of the FireFall albums with some image of like a comet. Am I correct with that, or am I off?
Well, the only album that had a comet on it was our first album in 1976. And being a painter, I wanted to paint the album cover had the idea of a comet and whatever. And Atlantic Records says, thanks for the idea, kid. We'll take it from here. and did it photographically with airbrush. Stunning first album cover of FireFall, you know, and not only wanting to have the record sound like FireFall, I wanted to have the cover of this CD reminisce to back in the 70s. And I went through 50 to 100 different pictures of Comet that I found. And I found one that I actually liked better than the one we got to use. And I turned on the record label to that, and we couldn't get a hold of the photographer. I had his name, I had his, you know, he'd never respond because, you know, of course you have to get permission from photographers to use their picture. And so when I was posting, you know, on Facebook, a lot of other Comet pictures, the one that's on the album cover now was just one I put up on Facebook, and my manager saw it and said, that's the cover. And I went, really? And he said, yeah, look how great that is. And I went, well, you're right. It is great. And we did it. We were able to get a hold of that guy, the photographer up in Oregon. And that picture is amazing. It's the Comet Neowise of last year. And it's a time-lapse photo with the phosphorescent stuff in the ocean, glowing, perfect cover, which takes people back to kind of the FireFall heyday.
You got a beautiful picture on your wall behind you, and it looks like a comet.
It is the Comet. Actually, once they did the first album cover, I decided, being the painter that I am, that I'd do my own version of our first album cover. So, I made prints of that and sometimes sell them at gigs or whatever. But yeah, that's the FireFall first album cover.
Oh, it looks great. I'm like, look at that thing. It says here the name FireFall comes from Yosemite National Park, where for over 100 years they let up a bonfire on the top of the cliff and slowly push it off. Do they not do that anymore?
They don't.
Okay.
They stopped it in I think the early 70s for ecological reasons. Now, there's two FireFalls in Yosemite. There's the man-made one that started back in the 1800s, where they actually would set the bonfire off and they had this plunger kind of push it off slowly, and it looked like a lava flow on this 3,000 foot cliff, and it was amazing. But if you've heard, once a year in 2 weeks in February, the setting sun illuminates Horsetail Falls in Yosemite National Park, and it makes it look like a firefall, and it's red and looks kind of like lava, but it's the real Yosemite firefall on Horsetail Falls, and and it's just spectacular. And you could Google FireFall Yosemite and see 100 pictures of it come up immediately. But when we were looking for the name of the band, when we started the band back in 1974, we had a really short list. Finding a good name is tough. And Rick Roberts, who's Mr., he'll just throw out, he's an overactive mind kind of guy. He said, "How about FireFall?" And we looked at each other and said, "Well, I don't know. Put it on the list." And at the end of the month or two before we had to play our first gig, we looked at the list and said, "Okay, FireFall it is." So Rick knew about the Yosemite FireFall. And once we put our first album out, it was interesting because, fans would send me pictures of the Yosemite FireFall, and it's just kind of a historic kind of thing.
I got to check that out. It sounds really cool. I mean, just visualizing this thing coming over and just seeing, like you said, like a lava, and seeing the spectacular view of it. The recording process, Jock, as you said, everybody's in different states. Everybody just sending WAV files back and forth for the most part.
Well, it was really tough. And again, as the producer of this Comet record, it was very challenging, because there were times when we'd cut a song and I'd be in the studio and I'd do the guitar parts by myself, and I'd need background vocal parts, and the next time that the band was going to actually be together to be in a city where we could go in the studio for a few days and whatever, might be 9 months later. And I'm going, wow, I need a background vocal part now.
Right.
So I did use a couple of great singers from Boulder, Steve Weinmeister, who had been the lead vocalist of FireFall for 20 years, him and a fellow named Mark Trippensey, who's in an Eagles tribute band, The Long Run, out here, who sounds a lot like Don Henley, So, I did use some outside musicians to play and sing on the record just to get it finished up. But it was really hard to get to a point. And what we had to do would be, if we had a gig in Colorado where I live, or in Nashville where Gary Jones, the lead singer, lives, if we had a gig there, we'd try to get everybody there 2 or 3 days early to go into a practice room and screen songs and look at available songs or work stuff out or go into the studio. So it was really a pain in the ass to get this record done. But the one thing that, the only thing that matters when an album is done is what it sounds like now.
Right.
And I look at the process and how hard it was to get it going, and it doesn't matter now because it sounds great. And you're right. I think that the production of the record and the players. And one of the things I did as the producer, I didn't want to fill up every track. I wanted to keep things pretty simple in an old kind of 70s production kind of framework to really let the listener hear the vocals. Oh, there's the guitar part. Oh, it's flute, nothing fancy, and so many records nowadays, and for the last 20 or 30 years, producers and artists just fill it up. Hey, let's have more percussion. Hey, more vocals.
Oh, it drives me crazy.
Whatever. So, I mean, when you listen to a song on the record, our record, Comet, Younger, written by the great Nashville writer Gary Burr, I wanted to keep the production of that really sparse and keep it really simple. And to me, that's one of my favorite songs on the record. Not only is it a great damn song, but the production on it, there's nothing fancy, and you just get to listen to it. And really that harkens back to the 60s and 70s when, the Byrds or the Eagles or Poco made records that they could play live.
I'm a lyric guy. I want to hear it. I really love to hear every instrument. You hear that crystal clear on this record. It is very simple. It's all radio friendly. It has a beautiful flow to it. Before I met you, there she is. I mean, I got little notes here. There she is. Great love song. Let Me In. I mean, you could really I like to close my eyes, crank it up, and try to just visualize what you're trying to accomplish here. And for what you went through as recording process of what you just told me, I mean, you definitely got to tap yourself on the back, because putting this together, a 10-track with everybody all over the place, and call Timothy and John and this and that, you did a really super job, and I definitely applaud you. You mentioned, as a guitar player, Jock. I'm not a musician, but a lot of my listeners always ask me, you should ask about more gear questions. So I mean, I know, Fender and the Strat and the Gibson, but I started asking a little bit more, try to get a little bit more deeper. You mentioned like this boy, that's crazy. Doing a guitar solo and Eric Clapton in the room watching, that is like insane. When you do a solo, Josh, are you thinking scales? Are you thinking emotion? Are you thinking attitude? Are you thinking I got to hit the right notes? Or you just, whatever feels right, feels right?
Well, that's a really good question. And each lead guitar player is different. And, I've heard stories about Jimmy Page just agonizing for weeks over what solo or what notes to play on a certain song. And believe me, we've all been there. Now, I have to say, I have to take us way back. When I was a little kid, and my mom found Johnny Smith, the famous jazz guitar player who used to play with Stan Getz and Doc Severinsen and all these great guys, and was the Downbeat's top jazz guitar player for a couple of years in the 1950s. One of them, and like I said earlier, I mean, I was playing Bach and Duke Ellington and all these, fancy songs and everything. But I think the thing that I learned most from him, and I don't think he ever said this to me, is that taste, or being a tasteful musician as a soloist, when you're soloing and improvising, taste isn't so much what you play, it's what you don't play. And it's the spaces you leave. And a lot of times the spaces you leave as a soloist speak more to people than any note that you would play in your lick or anything.
Totally agree.
And so I grew up, I mean, I knew that was instilled in me when I was 10, 11, 12, 14 years old, so that but by the time I became a soloist, a guitar soloist in a lot of the bands that I was playing with, I had this tasteful melodic thing going in me, which really helped me a lot actually to stand out from other guitar players, because a lot of guitar players, as you well know, think that they're going to just show off how fast they can play or whatever. So when you get to Firefall for me, and I was really hitting my stride there melodically and as a fairly evolved soloist, a lot of the times, okay, so and I wasn't a lyricist. When Firefall got together, we had Rick Roberts and Larry Burnett as our main songwriters. And from our first day of practice as the band Firefall, we had 20 or 25 original songs to play. Amazing. And we didn't have to try to sound like a band. When we got Michael Clark and Mark Andes and me together, adding David Muse and everything on Rick and Larry's songs, we sounded just like us without even having to try to sound like anything. Of course, I wanted to play the right solo and, know what I wanted to play. But I also, a lot of times, would just go right brain it and not even think about it. And because the best solos and a lot of the best music that is written or played by people isn't a thought process.
Right.
It's a gut thing, and it's from your heart. And, Mexico, like I said, was a one-take solo, and I wasn't thinking at all. I was just reacting to, I'd hear a line of Rick Roberts' vocal, and I'd play something similar or whatever, and it would fit great. My solo on You Are the Woman wasn't a one-taker, but I had no idea what I was going to play before I started playing it. And, a lot of times as a soloist, you'll kind of play the first 4 or 5 musical passages or licks fine, and then mess up and then punch in and finish it off. But my whole thing as a soloist is really non-thinking and just trying to react to what the song needs. And, like I kind of, when I would give guitar lessons many, many years ago and people were asking me about soloing, I'd kind of use the example of, it's kind of like Michael Jordan running a fast break. He's not really thinking.
Right.
He's dribbling. He's either going to pass, he's going to do this move and dunk it, or he's just reacting to what is presented with him and does it. And it's great.
That's a good analogy.
And, and when it was over, all of the TV stations would run that thing and just say, how did he do that? Or
right.
Isn't that amazing? But he wasn't consciously thinking about it.
Right.
And, and
he's not thinking of where he's going to grip the ball. It's reaction, how they're playing defense, what's he going to do? And he just does it.
Right. And frankly, you can tell, great soloists are up there just playing and not really thinking about it. And, and I had a lot of solos on the early records where I had no idea what I was going to play until I played it. And either it worked or it didn't. And if it didn't work, hey, give me another time.
I just thought it was a good question, because I go to concerts and you see the guy, he's got the facial expression and he's showing attitude, emotion, but is he really thinking, man, I got to hit note for note, or I want to make it like the album? Because to me, I go to a live show, I want to see them enjoy it. I want to see you guys enjoy yourself,
right? But
successfully. Obviously, you want to hear the song. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm thinking, what are they actually thinking? But as you said, a lot of it, I'm sure, is just brain and fingers. And
right.
You played, You Are the Woman a million times, so it's not like you have to
Well, I do know in You Are the Woman that's the solo I have to play.
Right.
I remember about 20, 25 years ago, I decided, screw it, I'm going to play something else, on our biggest hit. And I could play something else on D and G and A, and I played something else. And I remember seeing the looks on the crowd like, ooh, that's not right. That's not right. But it's interesting, as band leader of Firefall, I think that a band really owes the crowd that buys tickets a lot. And that the songs that they expect to hear, they want them to hear they want to sound like the record. And, you know, there's a lot of songs that I keep a really tight rein on. You Are the Woman, Just Remember I Love You, Cinderella. Those songs have to sound like people expect.
Right.
Because they're paying money to hear that song that they got married to or whatever, or that made such a big impact on their younger life or whatever. Now, having said that, FireFall's lucky enough to have songs like Mexico or Strange Way for David on flute, or Livin' Ain't Livin', or different songs to where as soloists we can stretch out and go somewhere brand new, you know. And you know, so it's, you know, it's a nice balance between being really familiar and playing the songs like they're supposed to sound, but having some places to maybe go new places. But as a soloist, and you know, it's a really good question, and in answer to a few of your specifics, yes, I want to play very precisely. No, I don't want to play just like the record, but on You Are the Woman and a few of those songs,
Right.
or just remember I Love You, where David and I are playing saxophone and lead guitar together as a dual melody. Those things need to sound just like they're supposed to sound. So it's nice having that to work with, but then also nice having a little flexibility. And frankly, and I won't name any names, but when you go hear one of your big famous bands and they're just sounding like the record, and the guitar player plays,
yeah, that's boring to me.
a solo that has been there for 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice, but you know, it's like, wow, you know, it's kind of like, let's see some fire.
Yeah, exactly. That's what makes the live show. You know, I could play the vinyl all day long, but
Right.
that's what makes the live show. No, it's a good answer. I appreciate that. What was I just thinking? Oh, your first thoughts on getting on stage in front of a live audience again? Got to be emotional going, man,
Yeah,
you've done it for how many years? And then we lost a year, and the crew, as you mentioned, and the musicians not getting paid, and, you know, and then you're going, you know, hopefully sooner than we expect. I hope, I pray. And then you got a gig and you're back on stage. What are you going to think? What do you think? What's going through your mind?
Probably what's going through my mind is remembering all those parts that I played for 20 years that I need to play again, but I haven't played for a year and a half.
Right.
But it'll be just really great. I mean, I grew up with FireFall songs and being the lead guitar player in that band, so it'll all come really naturally. You know, we're going to have to really rehearse vocally to make sure that we have our good vocal blend again. But it'll be so great to play live in front of people, and you know, and our fans. It's fairly interesting because our main fans are our age, 50s, 60s, 70 years old. You know, me too. But it's interesting, you know, when we're playing and you see 20 and 30-year-old kids out in the audience who are singing all the lyrics to your songs. And the reason is their parents played that music a lot when they were growing up. You know, they played the Eagles, they played Dan Fogelberg, they played FireFall, they played Little River Band, you know, and, you know, that music of the 60s and 70s was really unique in a lot of ways. And, you know, in the 80s, the musical landscape kind of changed from underneath us. And suddenly it was disco and then grunge and, you know,
hip-hop and all this.
Yeah, all of that. And then whenever it happened, I forget whether it would be late 80s or early 90s or whatever, when there became that new genre of music, classic rock, you know, because people our age couldn't really listen to much on the radio and they wanted to hear Steely Dan again or hear Little Feat or hear FireFall, you know?
Well, I think that was us. I mean, we're a classic rock format, but we said we could do anything. I mean, so we added this word, redefine, classic rock, redefine. So if I want to play AC/DC, Highway to Hell, but I want to play FireFall, You Are the Woman, I can. Or anything new I can play way back when, and then back it up with You Are the Woman. So, I mean, and I think that, and all, you know, you don't have to be in a genre anymore. You know, when I see Post Malone with Ozzy Osbourne, and I remember Taylor Swift she started country and now she's somewhere else. It's like all bets are off. Music is music. And
well, you're a rare radio station. My hat's off to you because, I mean, back in the 60s, of course, and even into the 70s, a radio disc jockey, if the station was cool enough, pretty much, and he had to play a few certain songs every hour or two, but you had a lot of flexibility. And if you heard something somewhere else that went, wow, I want to play that, you could do it. And of course, radio is so unlike that now, and it's so corporate. And, I mean, it's impossible to try to get on the radio now or have a hit record. And even bands that are bigger than FireFall, like the Doobies or Toto or something, they're not going to have another hit record because radio, classic rock will play their old hits, but they don't want anything new from Toto.
Well, when you look behind me on my wall, even Timothy B. Schmit, when I reached out to Timothy, love his album, Leap of Faith. He only did a handful of gigs. He did come out to the East Coast for a little bit. And I met him and he was so thankful. And I started playing it. And I started building this listener base going, who's that? What's this? Where's that? Because you don't hear it on corporate. And my friends that are in the corporate world, like you said, oh no, here's the lineup, and that's that. And I'm playing new Styx. I'm playing new Alice Cooper, new Billy Gibbons. I get 10 CDs a week. Be careful of what you wish for. The guy playing new music from people from all over. I don't even know, begging me to, can you just listen, please? That's the hardest part of my job, is trying to find time to listen to all these CDs and give it due diligence. And I say to my wife, mute Mike and Molly for 2 seconds and listen to this track. And she looks at me and I look at her and go, it got to be a top 20, but am I the only guy going to play it? So I'm praying that people buy your album. The album is called Comet, the CD. Where can they get it, Jock? Is it on all the
I was
streaming?
just going to tell you. Now, it's really great because you can buy the album on a lot of places, including, amazingly, Target and Walmart.com.
Cool.
But one of the best places to get it is go to our website, FireFallOfficial.com. You can buy the new album. You can buy a picture. You can buy a hat and a CD and a T-shirt or whatever. But, we're really proud of that. And what I was going to say earlier was, so we lost about 40 or 50 gigs in 2020. We played a handful of dates. Last date I think we played was on Valentine's Day before we realized, that was it. And in fact, we had on April 1st this year, we were supposed to go on a cruise, one of the rock and romance cruises, on a cruise ship for a week. And, and I'm going, we're not going on a cruise ship. Even if nobody gets sick, they may not let you back into port.
Exactly.
So, but our first gigs that have been rescheduled are in July of 2021, which kind of sucks. But, the pandemic's raging and we're all being careful. And I got my first vaccine the other day, and I'm getting my second one here in about 2 weeks. So, I'm old enough in Colorado that they said you can get it now, but, I wish everybody out there in radio land and listening to this, be safe. And there's a lot of new music coming out, and FireFall's happy to have our new record out.
We're glad that I don't care how long it took that you put it out. It's an outstanding record. Well done as an artist, as a producer. We got to get you over here to Daryl's house. That's where I got to hang out with the guys from Ambrosia, and maybe work with Annie and get you over here when we're able to get back to live music.
We played there in 2018.
Oh, okay.
And we played in Daryl's house on like a Wednesday or Thursday, and then went and played BB King's when it was still
down the city,
in New York City. Of course, that's closed now. And I'll tell you what, just not only just small businesses in general, but how can theaters and music clubs be still open? And a lot of people think about the bands. Oh, we're not going to work for a year, but we have soundmen and lightmen and people who work at the venues and people who, there's a whole industry of the live music scene that people aren't making any money right now and it's tough.
Well, we're surrounded by 7 great venues, as you've been to Daryl's, and but I'm not sure how many are going to still be able to survive this whole thing.
Yeah.
But Jock, thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. I've had a blast. It's great to meet you, and I will definitely catch up to you the next time you come in the area. But for right now, we're going to do a little FireFall and play the video way back when. And when you see that, it's going to definitely encourage you to go out and buy the album.
By the way, before you play that, the video for way back when, my son Jaime Bartley made that video, and it just turned out so great. He did a fantastic job, and it's gotten amazing airplay on YouTube and stuff. And thank you for playing it.
Absolutely. I encourage everybody to go to FireFallOfficial.com, the website, buy a t-shirt. Think about, like Jock just said, the crews, even the musicians, buy the CD. They're also on Facebook. They're on Instagram. And it's time to rock a little FireFall on Pat's Soundbites IGTV. Woo! Keeping new music alive on the radio and here on video. Sit back and crank it up. We're going way back when.
I grew up in LA, the LA area in the 50s and 60s. And I have to say the 60s were a pretty turbulent time. I mean, Vietnam was raging. We had the civil rights really, really heating up. There was the Summer of Love. There was all that amazing music. It was definitely an inflection point. Music really helped us get through a difficult time then. And it looks as if we're at another inflection point, and it's a lot of the same issues are resurfacing, and things are very, very dire. And maybe music is going to help us get through this storm together.
I remember way back when the songs on the radio, they set our lives on fire then, and showed us the way to go. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and from LA the Birds. Those bands played our music, and Dylan wrote the words. Way back when, we didn't know then we'd never again feel so alive. Way back when, in 1965. Yes, Mary was my brown-eyed girl, with skin a shade of pale. She lit my fire with her love and put the wind in our sails. Aretha sang about respect. We were younger than yesterday. turned up loud. Way back when, we didn't know then, we could never go back in time. Way back when, in 1969. Happier than we'd ever been. Way back when. Yes, everything seemed so easy then. Way back